So it's been a while since I've listened to Songbook. You know, when we did the first couple interviews, I was like I'd been listening to it a lot because of the mixing and mastering and everything. And then, you know, after it was published, and give it some listens. And then I've kind of, I think, hit that point where I'm like, it's hard for me to want to listen to it again. You know, like, I don't know, I'm just more interested in other things. So it's like, so I'm kind of feeling like I'm coming back to Songbook, mostly having been away from it since the last time you and I chatted.
Mm. Well, excited to get back into it and finish this out. We're doing part 3, the finale of this interview we've been doing with you, talking about your album Songbook. So I say we just get right into it with the first song.
All right.
Imagined him for years growing up. I imagine him still. I'm not sure what I would have said if you had asked me to describe him. He doesn't yell, he doesn't need to. Unless maybe it's out into the air, but it doesn't hurt. No, it never hurts. He would have taught me of this, I'm sure. I would have learned imagined him for years growing up. I imagine him still. I'm not sure what I would have said if you had asked me to describe him. He doesn't fix me. He doesn't need to. He sees me for who I am. But it doesn't hurt. It never hurts. He would have seen me and marked my potential. Lay in the path to surpass him, and then watched me surpass him. He would have shown me the beauty in failure. He would have modeled the grace in being wrong, even as he was wrong. Oh, I imagined him for years growing up. I imagined him still. I'm not sure what I would have said if you had asked me to describe him. I imagined him for years growing up. I imagined him still. He must be smiling in the eyes these days of my reflection. I imagined him for years growing up. I imagined
imagine him still. He looks me squarely in the eyes these days in my reflection, and I reflect him.
Role Model's been one of my favorites since the first time I heard it. That song means a lot to me lyrically, and I think is just a really special song.
Thank you. That song is a lot, man. It hits me hard, that song, like different times that I play it, and when I was working on it, like it's this song has like made me cry a lot of times playing it, and it's still a very like emotionally potent song for me, and yeah, sorry, I don't even know where to begin. Because I did want to say, listening to that, the guitars at the beginning musically, the first verse and chorus that have the finger picking, and there's the two guitar parts kind of going back and forth, and then the bass comes in with it, and those guitars feel really like I get lost in them. Like they kind of create this webby space that it feels like I'm just kind of floating in, if that makes sense, like kind of suspended in it, and like it's just kind of going around me. And I was just really appreciating that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when you're working on it, you get so close to this stuff that it's like, hard to see the forest for the trees kind of thing sometimes. So it's interesting to come back to it after not listening for a while and just kind of sit in the song and let it get me like that in a way that I hadn't really, I worked on those guitars and everything, but just the kind of full effect of how it came together, listening wise, was kind of cool to just have right now with that, with that listen. And I also really appreciated the very fuzzy, distorted nature of everything. The guitars, the bass, the vocals all have some like amount of distortion on them, and it's just kind of really, it's kind of edgy and cuts by the end, like when it's going more intensely. So the song takes this kind of journey from that like that webby vibe of like that kind of weird atmosphere to then the just like highly energetic cutting edge of the distorted parts and the punk drums and the intensity. I think cool.
I think this song is like also one of the ones that changed the most over time. Like,
Yeah.
hearing the demos over time as you've been working on this song, like it's gone through a lot of different versions, a lot of different kind of vibes, and kind of seeing that progression has been interesting in how you ended up on this final version. So I'm kind of curious to know a bit more of how your thought process went throughout producing this song.
So I wrote this song on acoustic guitar out in the backyard of the old house we used to live in one day. So I think this is the oldest. No, Say What's the oldest song on this album, but this is maybe next. It's one of the older songs, and so I wrote it on acoustic guitar, but it's got a rock and roll punk kind of vibe to it, guitar part wise, as it gets going. And I had a band for a little while, a bassist and a drummer playing these songs with me. And this was one of them that we had kind of just started to work on before we stopped playing as a group. And so this song was really conceptualized with playing with those guys, and that would be with David Zai, a punk drummer that I've been in a lot of bands. I mean, a drummer who I've played a lot of punk music with in the past. So his drums are very top of mind to me. So I had kind of demoed out an electric guitar version of what started out as just this acoustic song to be able to send him so that he could listen to it and learn the song and we could work on it in practice. And so I programmed some drums to go in there, and programming drums is it's always kind of this weird beast for me, because on one hand, I don't want to put a lot of time into it because it's just there as like a placeholder for keeping time and basic rhythm. And but then I'll have like, I'd really like it if when the chorus hits, they get a little, build up and crash cymbal to make it feel good when I'm playing guitar. So I can kind of play it more naturally because I've got the rhythm of everything going. And then it kind of can become a slippery slope, because then, where's the line where you stop crafting a better drum beat out of these programmed drums, and when do you just go and record the drum beat yourself? So it kind of went through some weird, ugly, morphy stages like that, where I had this kind of overly complex drum beat in there to record to that gave it this real punk vibe. And so then when it came time to kind of get it ready for the album, I was really wanted to realize the potential that song had. Like, I never really got to play it with David and Don. It would have sounded great with his drums and with Don playing bass. So I really wanted to do my best to realize that, to doing it myself. I'm not David and I'm not Don, but kind of channeling their approach to things as much as I can to just kind of create this, what we would have played as well as I can manage it, it always kind of had as I started working with the electric guitar parts, it always had kind of a Killer sort of vibe in my head. Like, certain parts of it make me feel like I'm in a Killer song. And so, kind of trying to get the right vibe with the distortion on the guitars and drums and everything was kind of key for me on this. I wanted it to sound with those like rougher edges like you'd get from a Killers or Strokes or those kind of bands that had that sort of edgy. I say edgy like I'm not using the word wrong. It just be like raw edged, like emo rock of the early 2000s.
Yeah. So of course, lyrically, this song I think is really well written, and of course, as you said earlier, like a very emotional type of song. And so I could be completely interpreting it wrong based on what your intentions were with it, but I'm like curious to know sort of how, like, what you intended to get across with this song and kind of where it came from.
I think it came from a place of feeling like I was in the backyard with the family just playing guitar. And it was fun. It was a beautiful day. And I was just feeling like there was a lot that I didn't have modeled for me to help me get there. Like a lot of the journey that I took to get to where I was, comfortably, peacefully at home in the backyard with these kids, that I just didn't have the example for me, set for me for how to get there in a lot of ways. And, there's a lot more to that story than that moment. There was a lot to come later with, reconciling issues that I had with my dad and recognizing ways that he did come through for me that I wasn't giving credit and all of this. There's a balance to this story, but in that moment, I was just really feeling a lack of guidance, a lack of example on being like a good, strong family man that can love his family and create, peace and joy in a life. And, there's so much that's challenging about that. And it just was feeling like I didn't have a lot of examples set for me on how to do that. So this song came out, and it just really struck to the core of what I was dealing with at the time. At that point in my life, was very much wrestling with these issues of masculinity and defining, how is it good for me to show up and how isn't it in the lives of these kids, and the way that reflects, me as a man, and my relationship with my father came up in ways that I hadn't really thought about in a couple of decades close to, of being an adult man on my own, and, just kind of put me in that place to have to think about these things a lot more. And so this song kind of struck right at where I was in that moment. And like I said, there was more to follow, which is where some of the other songs are about. But at that moment, man, I was just feeling that. And so, I don't know, I just started thinking about like what I missed and what that was, and trying to define that, the kind of going through the verses and kind of spelling out some of the things that I learned about being a man as an adult, and not really from men as examples, but often from women, often from friends, men, but like people my age that it was like struggling through stuff, together as a generation, rather than, inheriting it from the generation before. So kind of thinking like, how would I have wished someone showed up for me, and how do I turn around and show up for these kids with that? So just kind of in the verses going through different ways that expresses in life. Like, he doesn't yell. That's a big one. That's a opening line on the verse of like, well, for starters, yelling it's an uncomfortable, sometimes violent experience. And that's a good place to start, is just don't yell. That's something that, I think is just real basic and easy to understand. And it's not as simple as that. You need ways to not yell, but that's a good baseline to decide, is this okay if I'm yelling and things aren't all right? So, and kind of going from there, and just sort of these different ways that a healthy, safe man, parent, role model, would look like in day-to-day life.
So, of course, like, as you said, like, it was, with this song, a lot of kind of working through sort of the faults of your father and trying to learn and grow from that to do better. And I think a lyric that really stands out to me is, like, right at the end, where you say, "He looks me squarely in the eyes these days in my reflection, and I reflect him." So I'm kind of curious how that lyric kind of connects to these ideas you were talking about like looking to him and trying to do different, but then in the end you say you kind of reflect him in a way. So yeah,
man, that line was really hard to write. It's this song was, it was kind of getting grief off my chest. It was kind of, me bitching about this for a minute. And, that only is fair if you turn it around on yourself. You can rage all you want about what you didn't get, but then you have to turn around and be able to provide whether or not you did get or get, and so that the end there was kind of turning the tables on myself, from what I would have wanted as a role model to now it's on me to be that role model. And I just said all this stuff about what that should look like, set this whole standard, and am I going to do that? Am I going to be, meet that standard? And I sat there for a while not writing the line down, like just like pen over the notebook, just like feeling the weight of that if I write this down, I'm going to be a hypocrite forever, and so, I wrote it down. I believe I cried a bit. And since then, that line in this song acts like this kind of two-edged sword that like it either lets me see that I'm doing things well and showing up with love, or that I'm not. And it's, depends on the day. Like, that song judges me and that song like soothes me and lifts me up. It's a very complex relationship that I have with that song, because that song expects me to be a good man, and sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not. And it's going to be that way forever. Hopefully I'm a growth mindset oriented sort of person, and that we should try to be better. So I try to be a better person, and some things get better. And then I don't know, I never seem to run out of things that are crappy about me. But so this song is kind of this weird mix of like celebrating showing up in good and healthy ways, and passing judgment on when I don't. So this song is maybe the most like personally affecting song I've ever written. It's a lot of songs are kind of a journaling of, or a documentation of a moment in time, a feeling, experience. But this song is like an ongoing experience. Like, it's ongoingly interactive in how it kind of challenges me to live up to what I described in this song as being, a role model.
Yeah, it can be kind of easy to recognize and critique flaws in others, but like so much harder to see that in yourself and recognize your own faults and then actually do something about it. So yeah, I think that's kind of what I see in this song, you starting to recognize those things that maybe your own father didn't do for you, and some of the ways he didn't show up as you would have wished he would, but then in the end kind of putting that back on yourself to then make sure you're actually doing something with that and making that change, and just then being the role model you always wanted to have then for others. And it's really great.
Trying to reconcile with that is talking about what I lacked in an example and stuff, like as I said, there was more that came afterward, and that experience more of realizing ways that my father did show up for me that I wasn't giving him credit for, and it helps me to think through like, why was my experience of that different than what he intended? And I see that same dynamic, now work with kids, that the experience I'm trying to create is not the experience that they have. Those are two different things. And recognizing that, for myself, I overblew in some ways how what the issues with my father and those experiences in ways that these kids also have and will continue to do, like and so that's this kind of other dynamic there, like where in all these experiences as a role model, I'm sometimes doing good things, I'm sometimes being too harsh or critical or whatever, and also what the actual impact and experience of those interactions are is then their experience of those things that I'm doing. So it really makes it tricky to make these judgments about, to make these judgments about people who are or aren't, good fathers, good men, whatever. Like, it's complex. It's just really complex. We're humans and we need love and compassion, and most of us are better people than we want to give ourselves credit for, sometimes better people than other people give us credit for. And we're all pretty shitty sometimes too, and we gotta recognize that and make change. But man, it's an experience to kind of come face to face with it in these new contexts all of a sudden, suddenly becoming a man in the life of 3 children, as opposed to, having these kids one at a time and raising them up as my own from babies, but coming in as this external family member all of a sudden, it was very challenging. It really made me have to look at myself and who I was. And, I'm not saying I was a miserable, horrible person. I thought I was a pretty decent person at the time, but decent people have problems, and decent people can be shitty and hurtful without meaning to. This song really puts me through my paces there to see how am I showing up and what impact is that having with these kids, and trying to reconcile that and bring a balance to it, and just by reminding myself what those things are supposed to look like, that it shouldn't hurt, that they should feel lifted up, encouraged, and it goes both ways. And I do some good things and I do some bad things, and the song makes me face those very clearly.
It's a reminder to just keep trying to always do better. Even, of course, you'll always have those more negative things, but as long as you're always just trying to keep the intentions right and work on getting better all the time and really facing those things, I think that's the most important thing. And showing that example of really trying to improve on yourself so you can be there for others better.
You gotta do it, man.
Yep.
What's a line you like from the song?
That last one?
Yeah, from Role Model.
He looks me squarely in the eyes these days in my reflection, and I reflect him.
Yeah.
That's the one that always really hits me there at the end.
Yeah, in my head, would that reflect? The word "reflect" really is in my head. That image is like a fuzzy one. It's like seeing in kind of a steamy mirror or something, or slightly distorted. Like there's like a casual reflection. It's not a clear image, but it's just sort of this like impression of it is how it looks like in my head.
You want to go ahead and get into the next one?
Sure.
When I opened my eyes, I could only smile when I could see. But then I laughed for a while. When I stood up, weary and slow. Still knew that I'd get where I wanted to go. Took a hike down the road, didn't bother to pack. Took the stars and some sunshine down a railroad track. I'm a bridge, yeah, I'm a steamboat, I'm a Buffalo Bill. Made love to the wind, I'm a mountain, I'm a hill. Talked with some wise men, some unseen and unheard. Took a long road to the wrong road. I'm a toad, I'm a bird. Saw the shadow of death out collecting the toll. I'm a city in ashes, I'm a story untold. Close these eyes, once more will I smile, 'cause I looked up and I looked down, and I laughed for a while. And when I lie down, still weary and slow, I'll know that I've been where I wanted, just wanted, always wanted to go.
So if I'm not mistaken, that's one of two songs on this album that you didn't write the lyrics for. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. The first one being Sophistication by Marty Hillard. Mm-hmm. And then this one, the lyrics were written by Uncle Bruce. Uncle Bruce is Elaine's mother's sister's husband, Bruce Holloway. So I knew him for a few years before he passed, and his daughter read this poem at his life celebration, and it was beautiful, obviously. That song, that poem struck me really hard both in just how excellently it was written, how beautiful it is, and how personally it hit. That is an old man's song lyrically, but my experience with losing Steph and kind of making a new life after that, this song gave me a lot to identify with in that journey. And so at when we got home, I think it was after we got home from that trip, I had asked for the lyrics for the poem, and I wrote this music to go with it, and made a little a quick demo of it to send to the family. And I told them I really loved the poem, and asked if they would mind if I worked on this song more and maybe played it with my band and stuff. And they were, approving of that. And they love the idea. And so I kind of sat on this song for a few years. Like I never really got a chance to play it in that band. I've played it at a live show or two where I've performed just acoustic. So I've played it a couple of times. And I had like an acoustic version and an electric version recorded on this for a few years. And then when this past summer, when it came time to do the album, I had always been hoping to get Chris and Paul, these are Bruce's sons, to come play on this song. And like we had talked about it, and it just had never worked out to get them here to do that. Chris lives in Kansas City, Paul lives in Boston, and so when we get together, it's usually not it's not in Topeka. It's like in other areas of the country. So never really had the chance to record. And then we had a family event in this summer, and Chris came, and he was lamenting that we had not had the chance to record before Paul passed away this summer. And he said, I've got a bunch of videos of Paul playing harmonica. If I sent those to you, do you think you could do something with them? And I was like, maybe I can try. I'd be glad to try, because the chorus on the song always really wanted, like, I always imagined some like blues guitar or something like that. It needed something to play a melody to solo on the choruses. And so he sent me a handful of videos, and I kind of listened through them, and I found a couple that I thought maybe I could do something with these, and stuck them in there. And it was surprisingly little work to take some harmonica that Paul played randomly at another year, at another space and time, just like playing some random harmonica, and just like basically slapped it in there and like cut it into some pieces so I could spread it out to make the timing work with my song, but it wasn't very complicated. It went really fast because he played these natural, storyline progressions in his soloing like you do with a good solo. And so it just fit really naturally over the chorus. And so I got to work those in right at the last minute. Like I had been planning on publishing this with just the guitar and vocals. But it was really in like those last couple of weeks that I was working on the album that came up. And so it was really emotional, because this album is just really emotional. It was a really emotional process to like go through these videos of Paul playing. This is like maybe a month after he passed. And, listening to him and seeing like the joy in the family, because it's just like videos on people's phones, It's, sometimes it was on stage, but a lot of times it was just like him and Chris hanging out. And Chris just got his phone out, is recording Paul playing harmonica randomly, So seeing this kind of, beautiful brotherly love and family events and stuff, and being able to get his parts in there and have Paul on that song, it's just like, yeah, man, it's beautiful. It's overwhelming, and it's just perfect. Like, I don't think I could have asked him to come do something more perfect than these videos that Chris gave me. So I was really really glad that worked out, to be able to kind of do something to preserve Paul's memory. He was a beautiful man that's really loved by a lot of people. He was a teacher, and he's just great. He's family. He made me feel like family in that family from the day I met him. So, it's nice to do something to honor his memory and kind of for his family. I'm sure it's weird and difficult in its own way. Having that piece of music, now that he's a part of, after the fact, but it's just really it just shows kind of the beauty of that family and how together they are, having those recordings in there, especially the piece at the end, where the song fades out and then this new video fades in, and it's Bruce and Paul and Chris playing music together. Bruce and Chris are playing guitar, and Paul's wailing away on the harmonica, and they're all singing together, and the family's around, the wives and sisters and Chris's little girl. And it's just a really beautiful moment, this whole family playing music, hanging out. The boys are playing, the girls are talking and making jokes, and the little one's running around doing her own thing, and just like the star of the show. And that's just kind of how that family is to me. So it's nice to be able to kind of work that in, and there's even a little like peak surprise from great grandma Alice. It's Elaine's grandma that passed a few years back. So she shows up in there too, which is really pretty. So just this really beautiful like family moment, and the fact that they allowed me to use those to kind of bring these beautiful things that Bruce wrote and that Paul did, and together into something for me to be a part of. That's crazy. Like, I feel really lucky and blessed, and that I got to like work on this really great piece of I keep wanting to call it a piece of music, because even though it was just lyrics, like, it was music from day one, like I could hear the song in my head from day one. Like, it was just, this is a song that never got to happen and should have. So I was really glad to be able to make it happen, because it deserved to happen.
Yeah. So I'm like kind of going off of that. I'm kind of curious how your approach to then writing this as a song in your production, was it different at all than normally, since you were doing this from like someone else's writing as a poem and trying to turn that into a song? Was there anything different for you there?
Production wise, the song always, and on one hand, I kind of felt like it would make a great bluesy rock song, because Bruce, he was a blues guitar player. Like, that's what he did. He played in blues bands his whole life. He has a fantastic personal history working with bands you've heard of, like the Rolling Stones and the stuff. And just so part of me wanted to do that, but that's not really who I am as a musician. So I don't think I could have pulled that off real well. But the song just really, I think, demanded a lot more simplicity than that. Like, the star of the show needed to be the lyrics, Mm-hmm. And so I had this recording of it. I had originally started it out on electric guitar, and then I recorded this acoustic version of it a few years ago. And sometimes I get really attached to a particular performance, so down the line when it comes time to work on publishing the song, I might, I'll often re-record parts that I had done rough takes of a couple of years earlier or whatever. I'll, get out my guitar and do lots of takes until I get a good one, maybe edit it together to make it good. But sometimes I get really attached to a particular performance at a particular moment in time, even if it's not perfect, or even if the recording of it was not like well done, sometimes even if it's on just like a phone or something. Sometimes there's something about a particular performance that I just have to use it and work around it for the song. And that was that way with this one. You can hear some like throat clearings and like creaks and stuff, movement, because I recorded it with a condenser mic that picks up everything, and so you can hear these like breaths and noises and coughs and stuff throughout the song, be moving around because it's the guitar track that's going, and I couldn't clean it out of the guitar track, but I really wanted that particular take of the guitar. I didn't want to re-record it. Because it just, sometimes the emotional experience of playing a song at a moment in time kind of matters more than the clarity and perfection of an excellent production. I'm usually going for trying to produce as well as I can, but sometimes there's a moment and that's the moment you have to have. So I don't know, something about that time that I played it really, that I really felt emotionally, and I liked some things I did with the guitar and how I did them, and just didn't feel like it would be honest to try to do it again and repeat the performance. That performance felt authentic, and I felt like trying to re-record it wouldn't be. So I think that also kind of helped to point at that this, production-wise, this song needed to be real simple. The album's more rock band setups and lots of layers and multiple vocals and blah, blah, blah. But, this song, for how it came to be and for what it means, I think it was a good time to really kind of stop and just like kind of bring the noise down and focus on this story that Bruce had to tell, and how it's, the story of a man finding his way home. And it's like, dang, that's my story. That's my album. Like this song, this man said in one song what took me a whole album to get to, like, okay, this is why he's, an incredible musician and songwriter. He just gets it. So it felt right to, really dial things down and just focus on it. And so I just did my best with the mixing on the guitar and vocals. The vocals were something that I did later. And, that was an experience coming back to this song after a few years, and with, more context of more deaths in the family since then and such. So it was very, grief oriented song to work on. It definitely put me through my grief about all of these experiences that Elaine's family was going through. And you can't really go through a grief like that without kind of then re-experiencing the own griefs you've had, your own griefs that you've had in the past. So, it kind of ends up being something that we share, as you encounter grief in your life, and then you encounter it again and again in these different contexts where it's like, in this context, this grief is this other person is grieving, and I have sympathy grief for that, for my own grief I've experienced. And I don't know, there's something very bonding in that, that, you know, has made me feel, you know, loved and cared for by that family, and that made working on this song particularly this summer, you know, a song that really put me through that process of working through grief and finding, you know, more life and more love at the end of it. Because that's, you know, it never stops hurting when someone's gone, but going through the grief process is how you get to where you're creating more life, not just suffering for what's lost, but, you know, making new, making more, with the people in your life that go on, because life goes on. Sorry, I get really into the grief aspect when it's, you know, it's the lyrics of the song. There's grief in it, especially at the end, but it's so much about the home aspect of it. And that's really what this album has been building toward, and that we kind of gloss over here, I feel like. I feel like this album has, you know, kind of started at the beginning and started working through the story of getting to home, but that there's this gap here in the album that is like the nitty gritty of all of that work of creating home. It's like, it's more of this album's more like the journey up to that, and then like the resolution of that. And this song kind of sits in the place of a whole nother story, I think, of the kind of nitty gritty work that gets you from everything that this album's been up to here to what the album is for the next couple songs.
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking that how this song is in a lot of ways a really good bridge between Role Model to then Safe Home, because like with Role Model, you're talking a lot about the sort of some of your own griefs, or just like things that some of the more negative stuff you've taken on over time and trying to deal with that. And then this one kind of has some of those similar ideas of dealing with grief, as you said, but then also kind of has that hopeful side, and you see like this like great man who's done so many great things and has like shown you sort of like a positive example, and had it with this song kind of talks about finding home and all this, and then leading into then Safe Home that kind of has sort of a bit more positive message and has that resolution. And so I think this song really fits well into the track list of the album.
Yeah.
Telling that story in a way.
Yeah, man. It's got, he really had Bruce really had a way with words on this. It's so simple and elegant. And, you know, I really admire that about it. It really tells the story and sets the stage. So I think it does a really good job getting us here to the conclusion to Songbook. It's two songs, but they feel like different endings to me. It's like the ending and then the like postscript or something, you know?
The epilogue or something.
Yeah. So I'll play
Safe Home.
Safe Home.
Home, wrapped in golden fading sunshine, steals my breath until I still my aching soul. Home, filled with noisy, never still life. Waves of music crash upon my thirsty soul. And on my way home, it's safe. Despite everything, I found a way to live with the pain I've known. And on my way home, with grace, I've made a place, a sacred space, a gift to call my own, my home. Filled in with stain, a craftsman laid his hands, his knees upon this floor. More than this, these histories we still receive. We live, we breathe, we pass it on. And on our way home, it's safe. Despite everything, we found a way to live with the pain we've known. And on our way home, with grace, we've made a place, a sacred space, a gift to call our own, our home. Our homes, we're born, we die, we share our lives with the people we call home. Our homes, our homes, we're the best we have, we'll give our last to the people we call home. And on our way home, it's safe. Despite everything, we found a way to live with the pain we've known. And on our way home, with grace, we've made a place, a sacred space, a gift to call our own. And on our way home, it's safe. Despite everything, we found a way to live with the pain we've known. And on our way home, with grace, we've made a place, a sacred space, a gift to call our own, our homes.
That song always really makes me happy. Like, whenever I hear it, it just makes me think about how, like, you have taken all these things from your life, the good and the bad, and everything that's come, and at least from my perspective, like, really gotten to a great place with all of it, and really made a great life, and have found this home, and
I love it, man.
just I from my perspective, I really think you've done well with that whole idea of being that role model, and have become someone who can inspire others, and you do great things for your family and in the community and all sorts of great stuff like that. And it's just, I mean, for me, like, as a younger person who is really trying to find my way, it's really inspiring seeing you and how you've taken this journey and gotten to this place. And this song really makes me reflect on that, and I think is a really hopeful and inspiring type of song.
Thank you, man. That thank you. That's, it it's sort of, it's part of me that it's, hard to hear compliments like that, but it's also, it's what I want, I really believe in the power of stories, and for all the feeling that I had that there weren't a lot of good examples of building strong, healthy relationships with loving partners and raising children and stuff, that that stories are how we learn things. Like, we have our experience of the world, the parents we grow up with, the siblings, all that. And we live our life and we have our experience of life. And that's a lot. There's a lot there. But stories is how we experience anything outside of ourselves. If your friend is telling you what he did this weekend over lunch, that's a story. You weren't there. You didn't experience it. It's just someone telling you about this experience that you didn't have. And, I as I grew up and started like thinking about the stories that I had growing up, I just felt like there should be more, that I felt like we were getting the same stories all the time, the different sitcoms and everything. Like, it always felt like the stories followed the same patterns that telling, and if you read enough writing advice, you hear things about like, you've got to focus on the conflict, and conflict needs to drive what happens from one scene to the next. And like, that's true, but also like, why can't stories have healthy relationships in them and still have conflict, or have conflict that's not around the relationship? Like, why don't we have more really healthy examples of relationships and conflict and trauma and dealing with these things in stories? Like, having the conflict is the story. So that makes it hard to tell not having the conflict as a story. Do you want to read a story where everything's great all the time? Well, actually, you might. On some level, you might. Like, they call that cozy now, But also, why isn't there a place for that in stories where things go wrong? Like, life isn't perfect. Like, having a happy life isn't about everything being perfect all the time. Having a happy life is about being able to experience whatever happens on being able to experience it and share it with the people around you, because if something happens and you're experiencing it at the same time, you're sharing that experience, and how you show up affects how other people experience it. And so, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought here. But what I was trying to drive at is that what story should an artist tell? Their story. This is my story. And life is good. I have love. I have family. Things are good. And that's good to have songs about. And those are stories we need too. We need stories about things being good. And so this story, this song, I wrote it on the front porch on a beautiful day where the sun is shining, and Elaine and a couple of the kids were out on the porch, and life was just happening, and it was beautiful. And this song is the answer to the question posed by Gasoline, where Gasoline has everything. It's the midlife crisis where the man has everything and isn't happy or doesn't know what's next, and it's just like feeling like he needs to burn it all down because it hasn't given him what he wanted. And so, Gasoline poses the question of what do you do when you get everything you wanted? And Safe Home answers that question. It says, enjoy it. Obviously, it's good. It's beautiful. Enjoy it. Stop and appreciate what you have. When you have love, appreciate it. When you have home, appreciate it. When you have when you live in a community and you get to experience what the community has built for you for years before you showed up on this planet, appreciate it. I really love the second verse of the song. It's, we moved into this house that was built in 1886, which for our country and this part of the country in particular, that's old. That's a very old house and building. And so this house has history, and it's got these wood floors that were put in by a man, before Home Depot existed. He didn't have a drill or a power saw or anything like that. He had the tools of the day and a lot of hard work and sweat, and being able to live in this house fills me with a lot of reverence for what this house has been for people that came before me in this house. And so I think the verse describes the man on his knees, putting this floor in, staining the wood grains of it, and just kind of trying to connect to that history of this place and to stop and appreciate that work that man 130 years ago put in, that is part of the legacy that I get here to share with my family and everything that comes with that, this community and the stray cats that hang out on our porch and doing the porch concerts during the summer and all this stuff. This house has been like a physical embodiment, representation for me of this place that I've come to in my journey these past few years of settling down in this community in Topeka, putting roots down, finding a place with my family in my community to, show up, be involved, and just live life and enjoy it, even when it's just, nothing special. Hanging out on the porch and admiring the sun and, just appreciating everything that is. It doesn't need to be more than this. It doesn't even need to be this much. And life is good if you show up good for it. Yeah. It doesn't just happen to you good. It takes, there's a lot to prevent people from making a good life. I'm not saying it's easy. It wasn't easy for me. And I know that at any moment things can change. It's chaos, life and the universe and everything. But showing up every day in life ready to put in work, ready to be honest with hard feelings, but also ready to give yourself some love and respect, and ready to like stop and admire and enjoy and appreciate what you have, even if it isn't everything you ever wanted. It just it makes this safe place, which is this song, Safe Home. You know, it's this is where I get to be. This is what I was driving for, even when I didn't know it was what I was going after. You know, it's not stagnation or passivity. You know, it's work. It's creativity. It's effort. It's trouble and problems and everything else along the way. I live in the same world everyone else does. That's full of stress and anxiety and everything. But it's a relief and a joy to come to a part of my life personally and circumstantially that can have a beautiful home, a beautiful family, and, you know, experience the happiness that we create doing so, even in and amongst all the rest of it. You know, just despite everything, we found a way to live with the pain we've known, like not just to live, but to thrive and strive and make things better. You know, so this song feels really, it brings me a lot of peace. This album's full of a lot of turmoil and a lot of intense feelings, positive and negative. But this song really brings me home. You know, this song really makes me feel like I've landed. And then the next song, It's a Bounty, makes me feel grounded, like I can sink into it.
Mm-hmm. As you talked about that, it really reminded me of a line from a poem I wrote like last year or so that goes, finding happiness is not about making the bad days go away. It's about making the good ones stronger. And I think that's kind of a similar idea to what you were talking about. Like, you don't have to have everything. Not everything has to be perfect. There will be bad things along the way, bad things that happen. You'll have those bad days and everything. And instead of using your energy and time dwelling on that and always trying to fight the bad things that happen, if you can accept that and instead focus your attention and energy on the good things you do have, and when you have those good days, really appreciating them for being there and making the most of it, then in the end, like, even though you had tons of bad days too, if you really made the most of those good days, like, it'll be a life well lived. And that'll, like, I think that's kind of how you find happiness in a way, like accepting the bad and making the most of the good.
Yeah, man. Making the most. That's a point of view and attitude that I really came confronted with and you know, worked on when Steph was sick and we were going through everything there. You know, life was so difficult and such a challenge, so stressful to go through all that. And but it was also the time I had with Steph, you know, and so making the most of it was a theme. You know, I didn't want the last months of her life to be just miserable, you know. There was a lot that was miserable about it, that, you know, there was a lot of pain, there was a lot of difficulty and everything. But trying to have the attitude of making the most, not ignoring that there's pain and that things are hard, not pretending that that's not the case, but just, okay, that is the case. And also this sandwich is delicious, you know, you know, also that flower is really pretty, you know, also like snuggling is really nice, you know, just everything that you can appreciate, finding appreciation in it, you know, no matter how hard things are, you have to put some appreciation out there, you know. Those that have more should appreciate more, of course. But if you want to, not if you want to have more, if you appreciate what you have, no matter how plentiful that is or how unjustly minimal that is, it creates some joy for you. And that's like in your own power to do, you know. That could be very difficult when you have nothing or when what you have is painful. But it's still something that we as individuals have to experience for ourselves, or to kind of ignore and put away and have our entire experience defined by what we don't have and by the difficulties thrust upon us. And man, that sucks. You know, like if life is that brutal, then like what little you can find, you know, gladness and gratefulness for is something. And it's more about, I think creating the habit than it is how good things are. It's not really about how good things aren't. It's about having the habit to stop and just have what you have, instead of thinking about what you don't have, trying to get something else, lamenting what's lost, you know, but just always taking time to have what you have, and even if it's not enough, to be grateful for it. It's just, it's heart exercise, you know. It makes you, when you can appreciate what you have, like you're going to show up for it differently, and that's going to make things better in the end, you know, no matter what might still be against you. If you have, you know, that kind of gladness for what you do have, for what you have been given, I think you create a lot more space for more, and more isn't the point. It's just whether or not you get more, it's how you experience what you have. So keeping that habit in place helps you to always continue to find joy in life, because you have the habit of finding it. You have the habit of creating it where it doesn't exist, and knowing that you can create it out of very little. You know, it doesn't have to take a lot to create joy, love, peace, even if it's just for a few moments, you know.
I think that's kind of what then the final song, It's a Bounty, at the end kind of gets into. Like, I kind of see that as taking those small moments and really making something great out of it, and how that just those little things can bring such a sense of joy and fulfillment.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead and get into that one?
Yeah.
take to make these days linger on.
While this fades out for a while, for a few minutes yet, I'll explain that this is the sound outside of my porch, just like on the first song, It's a Bounty, the opener of the album. You hear the sound of the wind and wind chimes blowing, which is out on my front porch during the day, obviously a windy day. And then this ambient track that you're hearing now was recorded at night several months later, maybe over a year later. During the summer, you can hear the cicadas, so that dates it for you. At the beginning, I usually record when the kids aren't here, for probably obvious reasons. Usually want to minimize sound when you're recording, so I had set the mic out there and was going to record 30 minutes or something of ambient noise out there, and then see if I could use some of it for this track later. And then pretty shortly after I started recording, Justice and West came home, and so at the beginning, before the music starts, you can hear a jingly bell and some just like creaking and thumping noises, and that's the kids coming home, which is funnily enough the second time that I've published music that has the sound of the kids coming home. There was a track on the Cirrus EP where at the very end, I had been working on music while everyone was out of the house, and then I didn't realize that I left it recording when they got home, and so I came back later and saw, oh shoot, I'm still recording. But it ended up just kind of fitting, and I left it there. And so kind of same thing here, like it's funny now to listen to the track and then I hear the jingle of the bells from the door, and I immediately think, oh, someone's at the door. Oh no, wait, that's just the recording. So yeah, this is kind of the nighttime outside ambient track for this kind of closing reprise version of It's a Bounty. That is, in my head, it's the nighttime song, the nighttime version of It's a Bounty, and kind of shows this like community that I imagined in the first version, in the evening, sharing time together and just kind of, eating and telling stories and winding down before bed, and what does that look like? And it's a mix of things. There's the men are talking about the things that made them proud. They're telling stories about their day and what they did and feeling good about themselves, but they're also sharing about the things that made them, the things they struggle with, the things that made them feel anxious and whatever. But they're talking about it, and it's not shameful, and it's not secret, and it's not, it's not a big deal. It's just happening. And the women are are doing what the women do, which is drink tea and get to work. They do so many things. I hear my Elaine and her friends talking about all the stuff they're doing. And I'm just like, dang, women do so many things. I don't know how. I don't know how they get it all done, but geez. And so, it's just imagining that community where they do that, and it's out in the open, and it's valued and it's appreciated, and it's they get to shine and be loved for it, and the kids come growing up around this and seeing that the line is they see that in their grief joy still returns, that that even though the day maybe had some hard things, maybe had some good things, at the end of the day it's family together, and life goes on, and we celebrate it, and we share in it, and we do it again, tomorrow.
Yeah. I think first of all, the just atmosphere you create with this song is so good. Like, just from the sound alone, like, I don't know, just like transported to a different place when I listen to this song, and I don't know, it just gives a feeling just with that atmosphere that's so powerful. And then the lyrics, of course, with this song are pretty simple and minimal, but they do so much to really like bring a lot of imagery and emotion and everything. Like, when I hear this song, I'm there with the people. I see it all. I feel it all. Like, I don't know. I really think this is like an amazing closer to this album. It just takes everything from this whole story that it's told and just really leaves it off in a way where it takes all the feelings from that and just lets you sit in it for a while at the end, and you just feel it all. But it's not heavy. Like, a lot of the stuff the album talks about is dealing with some heavy things and everything, but in the end with this song, it doesn't feel heavy. It's like, I don't know, it's like taking all that it's talked about and kind of letting it go in a way. And I really like the way this song ends this album and leaves the listener.
Thanks. Yeah, as the album took shape, I was pleased by how that feels at the end. Safe Home is so big and bright and major and celebratory, but it's very high energy. It's very positive, but it's like this roller coaster high after what's been a wild ride. And I really, obviously for me, this album is very emotional. It's a very long emotional experience for 46 minutes or whatever it is. And by the time, as I was finishing this album up and giving it listens through and kind of going on this emotional journey, a little bit distanced because I'm in work mode, so I'm thinking about production stuff and whatnot, but it's still, the closer I got to finished, the more that like emotional journey was hitting me, which is kind of how I know I'm done in a way, is like when I could just feel the whole thing and not be too in my head about it, then it's done. But yeah, by the end of Safe Home, I felt very unsettled. Like, it was good, like there's a lot of energy and anxiety and grief and all that and throughout the album that leads up to that point. Safe Home, brings you home to this bright, safe, warm, good feeling place. But it's very intense. It's very, celebratory. And I appreciated the experience of going into It's a Bounty reprise, and just kind of creating that atmosphere to wind down into. The song is so the when I say the song, the guitar part was the first thing I wrote, that descending arpeggio, and it just felt so dreamy to me, and I really leaned into that aspect of the sound for the reprise in particular, slowly bringing in the ambiance of the nighttime, the cicadas, and just kind of the still air. Somehow stillness has a sound, you know what I mean? Like, there's no real wind or anything, but it's like that's its own sound. It's just space. It's not silence, but I don't know how to describe what it is. It's something. And then you hear the cicadas in there and everything too. But so there's that, and then I also played it at a slower tempo than the first one. So on It's a Bounty reprise, it's at a faster tempo. It's the same guitar track. Like, the recording of the guitar is the same for both It's a Bounty and the reprise. No, that's actually different now. Sorry. Originally, what I did was I had played the whole song through with both verses together, and then I cut it in half, and I put the first half as It's a Bounty and the second half of that as the reprise. But I did end up re-recording the guitar for the reprise on electric guitar later on. So confusing myself with that. But I play it at a slower tempo, and I added the long whole note string sections to just really lean into that dreamy vibe. And then a lot of my favorite parts about albums are accidents, the things that end up surprising me, that I didn't intend to do that, but it worked out, and now I like it. There was this drum track that I had programmed in there just to keep the time when I recorded the guitar part. And after I recorded everything, I just got into feeling experimental, and so I went in there to that the drum track, and I changed it to different instruments and sounds, and I eventually found, I don't even know what it is, just some weird tonal, like droney kind of sounds, and put it on there, and it creates this really weird pattern that's like in the music, but kind of feels like it's not. It feels like it's part of the ambient track or something, like a train or something going in the background, like a foghorn or something. I don't know. But it kind of bring it in and out of the track, and it kind of creates this sort of like undercurrent of like just a little bit of anxiety or something, like just a little bit of like the sound of it is like not soothing and lovely. It's a little bit weird, and like you can kind of zone out to it, but it's still just kind of sort of dissonant in a way. Like it may be actually dissonant tonally, but it's just sort of there in the background. I ended up really loving that aspect of it. You really I feel like you don't notice it during the song until the song finishes, and then it's just the ambient track that keeps going, and this drum track that I was talking about continues to go for a little bit and fades out, so you hear it come in then, and I really enjoy that little surprise there. I don't know, it adds this weird, it changes the ambiance in a weird way that is just kind of subconscious or something. Like, I don't know, I don't notice it, and then it's there all of a sudden. I'm like, whoa, it's trippy.
Is there anything else you want to say about the album as a whole or this song specifically?
Probably.
I
I don't think I've said enough yet.
I mean, we've talked a lot, of course, but now that we're like here at the end, is there any sort of reflections you have over the album as a whole, or like?
Well, yeah. It's been a hell of an experience to make this album and then to sit here and talk the whole thing through with you, because it was such an experience for me. It was too big to it's too big to talk about. Like, it's hard for me to talk about creating this album with people in casual conversation. And, it happens, especially with like Ben down the street. He does music stuff. And so sometimes I'll talk to him a little bit. But I don't know, there's so much of this album is just so deeply personal. But it, I really felt like I needed to talk about it. Like, it was just kind of, I made the album and normally that's enough. And like, I put out the album and then I'm kind of, by the time I do that, I'm done in that space in my head now, and I can kind of move on, and I'm happy and ready to move on. But this album just kind of kept rolling around in my head, even after I had finished it. And it just really felt like I needed to talk about it an excessive amount. So I really appreciate you giving me the avenue to do that, to have this conversation. It's been really helpful for me to just kind of put a sort of a cap on what's been a really long, weird, complicated journey. I mentioned earlier that it feels like there's a gap in this album, that there's this whole amount of story that I just kind of glossed right over to the happy ending. Yeah. That's what I'm working on now, is this like 2-part album. I think of it as like a double CD, where there's going to be 2 different halves. One half is a love story album. It's all love songs that I've written for Elaine over the years. And the other is this whole mix of songs that are all really digging more deeply and viscerally into the like song. It's all songs about masculinity, and it's that journey of these past several years, kind of having to reevaluate my ideas of masculinity, reevaluate how I show up as a man in the lives of people around me, like all that stuff that this album we've just spent all this time talking about kind of leads up to and kind of glosses over. This next album is going to get really into all that specific topic. Like, that's been an aspect of my life all these past years, and this next album will really dig into that aspect. And some of those songs are real dark and gritty, like some of these, maybe even more so. But in my mind, they're 2 sides of the same story, 2 sides of the same coin. Like, there's the love songs for Elaine. These are love songs too, but they're love songs for me, they're love songs because they are the work of growth, which is ugly. It's ugly and it's dark and it's painful and all of that stuff, but it's growth, and growth is love. If you want to show someone you love them, grow for them, right? And so that album is about that kind of personal journey, being a man in the lives of these kids, and doing that work to grow, to learn from mistakes, to learn from a lane, to wrestle with ideas and conflicts and issues around masculinity and society and our place in all of this and da da da. So the song, I think the sound that you get in Songbook of like dark rock music, punk, beautiful acoustic, singer-songwriter-y kind of songs, it'll really be a lot more of that. It'll kind of blow that out a little more, and you're going to get more of the dark, heavy rock side on the one side, and more of the acoustic, beautiful, orchestral and stuff on the other. But it'll kind of all be a mix, like Songbook was, where you get kind of a little of everything in there. So I'm excited about it. I'm kind of getting to work on it now. I've got the songs picked out. I've got demos of all of them. I'm kind of in an exploratory stage right now of kind of nailing down how I want to record things, kind of taking, okay, now that I've had this whole experience and I don't have the pressure of getting something done right now, I'm kind of trying to take some time to kind of perfect recording. Like I'm going to be perfect, but like step up my game on recording vocals, figuring out recording better drums. I've got a acoustic drum set here now with real cymbals. I've been experimenting with recording a mix of the cymbals and the electric drum kit, and just kind of working out what's going to create the best sound for this next album, and kind of iterating on demos as I go. So I'm pretty pleased with how things are taking shape for that. Some of this recent stuff I'm working on, I'm thinking like, hey, that sounds pretty dang good. I think I'm figuring something out here, and so hopefully this next double album won't take too crazy long to get done. It's probably overly optimistic for me to think about trying to finish that this year, but I'm trying to set that as a vague sort of goal to shoot for, and we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. I never meet deadlines, but deadlines help me get work done. Yeah. So
yeah, I get that. I mean, of course, I really appreciate you telling me about all this. I've really enjoyed seeing your journey with music and how this album Songbook has unfolded, and so it's been really rewarding to be able to talk with you about it and learn more about how it came to be and what the story it is really telling is. So again, thank you very much for that, and I look forward to seeing how this new album coming up will unfold. And
yeah, man, I'll be seeking your feedback on it real soon for sure, actually. Yep. Yeah. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.